I never told my son I was the reason his biological dad never came around because he deserved stability more than the truth, and when he said, I guess he just didn't want me, I bit my tongue instead of explaining that sometimes love means letting a door stay closed. I never told my son I was the reason his father never came around. And I've lived with that for 17 years. It's one of those secrets that start small, just a single choice you make in the middle of a bad situation. And then before you know it, it's grown so big it has its own gravity. And once it has weight, you can't put it down without it crushing someone. His name is Caleb. He was born in October during the worst thunderstorm I've ever seen. I was 22, exhausted, scared, and completely alone in that hospital room. I remember staring at the ceiling while the nurses cleaned him off. They kept asking if his father was coming. I said he couldn't make it. What I meant was, I didn't tell him I was in labor. What I meant was, I didn't think he deserved to be there. Caleb's dad, his name was Brad, was not a bad person in the way people mean when they say that. He didn't steal. He didn't hit. He didn't drink too much or disappear without warning. But he was unreliable. And worse than that, he was careless with people's hearts. He made promises like they didn't cost him anything. I'll be there, we'll figure it out, I'm not going anywhere. Then he'd vanish for days, come back with flowers and excuses. We dated for a year and a half. I thought I loved him. I definitely loved the version of him he showed me in the beginning. He'd show up at the diner where I worked, leave ridiculous tips just so he could make me laugh, and drive me home even though it was out of his way. He had these stupid jokes, these half-planned dreams about opening a mechanic shop with his cousin. I just need someone who believes in me, he'd say, and I did. For too long. When I found out I was pregnant, his first reaction wasn't fear. It was silence. And that scared me more. He just stared at the wall for a full minute, then said, "Are you sure it's mine?" I should have left then. I didn't. I wanted to give my child a family. I wanted to believe people could grow up and show up. But he didn't. Not once. He made it to one ultrasound appointment. Missed the baby shower. Said he got a job offer in Florida and needed to think about his future. That was his favorite phrase. I need to think about my future. I told him, your future is here. He's the size of a cantaloupe and kicking my ribs at 3 a.m. He left anyway. I raised Caleb on my own. Moved in with my sister for the first year, worked nights at a grocery store, saved every dime. I told myself over and over, he won't remember Brad. He won't miss someone he never met. But that's not how kids work. They ask. They always ask. The first time Caleb asked about his dad, he was 4. We were at the park and he pointed to another kid who had a man pushing him on the swings. "Is that his daddy?" he asked. I said, "Yeah, probably." Then he looked up at me and said, "Where's mine?" I froze. My mouth opened and closed like a fish. I finally said, "He's not around, sweetie." He didn't ask again for a while. But he remembered. Every birthday. Every Father's Day craft in school. Every time a teacher said, "Tell your parents," and he looked around like something was missing. Then, when he was 5, Brad called. I was washing dishes, hands in the sink, when my cell phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Then I heard his voice. "Hey, it's Brad. I've been thinking about him. About you. I want to talk. Maybe see him." I listened to the message 3 times. Sat on the kitchen floor and cried. Not because I missed him, but because I knew exactly what that would mean. It wouldn't be a reunion. It would be a door cracked open that Caleb would run through only to find nothing on the other side. I didn't call back. Instead, I blocked the number. And I told myself I did it for Caleb. Because I did do it for him. But I also did it because I didn't want to see him again. I didn't want him to confuse my life. I didn't want Caleb to know what rejection felt like after knowing hope. That felt crueler. So I closed the door. He never called again. Not once. Caleb never knew. I built a life around him. I met someone else when Caleb was 7, a man named Donnie, who was steady, kind, and there. He helped coach Caleb's Little League team. He fixed the sink when it broke. He showed up to parent-teacher nights and clapped the loudest at school plays. He never tried to replace anyone. He just stayed. Caleb calls him Dad now. Has for years. But a few months ago, he asked again. Out of nowhere. We were in the kitchen. I was folding laundry on the table. He was pouring cereal and I could tell something was on his mind. He said, "Mom, why didn't he ever come around?" I looked up. His face was calm. Not angry. Just waiting. I felt my heart in my throat. And I said, "Some people don't know how to stay." He nodded. Then, so softly I almost missed it, he said, I guess he just didn't want me. I wanted to scream. To grab his face and say, no, 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 it wasn't you, it was me. I told him to stay gone. I blocked him out. I thought I was protecting you. But I bit my tongue. Because what would that change now? He's 17. Almost grown. And I made my choice a long time ago. The truth now wouldn't fix the years he spent wondering. It would just change the shape of the hurt. So I sat there, folding socks, listening to the silence between us. I never told him. And maybe I never will. A week after the conversation in the kitchen, Caleb started acting off. Not rude. Not rebellious. Just off. Quiet in a way that didn't feel like normal teenage mood swings. He'd come home from school, go straight to his room, and barely say 2 words. I chalked it up to stress, finals, maybe. He had a part-time job at the hardware store, and Donnie said he seemed fine when he dropped him off some mornings. But I knew something was spinning in his head. Then one night, I was cleaning the living room, and his backpack tipped over. A piece of paper slid out, folded into a tight square. I picked it up without thinking. It was a printed-out message thread. An email, actually. From someone named Brad J. Turner. The subject line was, I'm sorry I waited so long. My hands went cold. I unfolded it and read the first few lines. Caleb, I know this might be strange. I've wondered for years if I should reach out. I've looked you up more times than I can count. I wasn't ready before, but I want to be now. If you want to talk, I'm here. Brad. I couldn't breathe. I didn't even know how he'd found Caleb. I never posted his name online. I kept our social media accounts locked down. But somehow he did. And Caleb wrote back. The reply was dated 3 days ago. I don't know what to say. Why now? Caleb. There was a follow-up too. Because I never stopped thinking about you. And I hate myself for being a coward. I want to know you if you'll let me. I sat there on the couch, holding this printed-out email, heart pounding so loud I could barely hear the TV in the background. He had already responded. That night, I couldn't sleep. The next morning, I waited until Donnie left for work, then knocked on Caleb's door. He was scrolling his phone. He looked up and said, yeah? I held up the paper. You want to tell me what this is? His face went pale. He didn't answer at first. Just took a long breath, sat up straighter in bed, and said, he emailed me. I didn't go looking for him, he found me. I thought we talked about this. I said, trying to keep my voice calm. No, he snapped. You talked. You told me he didn't know how to stay. You didn't say you blocked him. You didn't say you stopped him from trying. My chest tightened. I was trying to protect you, Caleb. He left me. I didn't want him walking in and out of your life. But it wasn't your choice to make. That cut deeper than I expected. Because he was right. You think I haven't wondered for years? He went on. You think I don't hear those little comments people make? You look like your dad or your mom raised you by herself, huh? I've had questions since I was a kid. And when he finally says something, you want me to ignore it. I sat down on the edge of his bed, trying to hold it together. I just wanted you to feel safe, I said. Stable. That man wasn't safe. He didn't show up. He didn't even try until you were 5, and that was once. And even then, I wasn't sure if he meant it or if he was just lonely that day. Caleb looked at me with a kind of hollow in his eyes I hadn't seen before. I get it, Mom. I do. But you lied to me. He didn't yell it. He just said it, flat and low. And that made it worse. I didn't lie, I whispered. Not telling the truth is lying. You told me he didn't want me. I shook my head, tears stinging my eyes. No, I never said that. You didn't have to. He stood up and walked to the window, arms folded. I'm not saying I'm gonna meet him. I don't even know what I'd say if I did. But I needed to make that decision. Not you. I didn't know what to say. I couldn't argue with that. I had made the decision for him and told myself it was love. And maybe it was. But it was also control. Caleb turned around and said something that crushed me. I don't know if I can trust you the same way anymore. Then he left the room. And I just sat there, staring at the emails in my lap, wondering how it all got away from me. The next few days were quiet. Not the peaceful kind, the tense kind where every sound feels louder and every silence feels like it's holding its breath. Caleb didn't avoid me completely, but the warmth between us was gone. He'd answer when I asked him something, but his replies were short. He didn't sit at the table long after dinner like he used to. He didn't joke with Donnie. He barely touched the guitar he used to strum every night. I gave him space. I thought maybe if I just let him cool off, He'd come back to me like he always had. But that didn't happen. Then one evening, I walked into his room to put away a load of clean clothes, and I saw an open tab on his laptop. It was a travel site. He was looking up flights to Jacksonville, Florida. That's where Brad lived. I knew that because I'd searched his name once a year for almost a decade. Always just enough to confirm he hadn't come back to Kentucky. Just enough to make sure he was still far away. I froze. I didn't touch the laptop. Just backed out of the room like I wasn't supposed to see it. But I couldn't breathe right for the rest of the night. I waited until Caleb went to bed. Then I sat on the porch with my phone and called a number I never thought I'd dial again. I'd unblocked it earlier that week in case things got worse. Now I was using it. He answered on the second ring. Hello? His voice was deeper. Slower. But still the same man. Brad, I said. Long pause. Is this Rachel? Yes. Another pause. I didn't think I'd ever hear from you again. I got straight to the point. Did you contact Caleb behind my back? I found him on Instagram, he said. Public post from his school's band account. I saw his last name and figured it had to be him. I just sent a message. I didn't know if he'd reply. I closed my eyes. He did. I know. I wanted to yell. I wanted to ask why now, why after all these years he thought he had the right to reappear like some ghost who suddenly wanted to be a father. But all I said was, what do you want from him? I don't want anything, he said quietly. I don't sleep well. I think about him all the time. I wonder what kind of person he is. I know I don't deserve to ask. But he answered me. So I'm here if he wants to talk. I didn't say anything. The wind rustled the trees behind me. Then he added, I'm not going to hurt him, Rachel. I swear. I want to meet my son before it's too late. I hung up without saying goodbye. The next day, I told Donnie everything. Every detail I kept from him, the phone call when Caleb was 5, the blocked number, the emails, the printed out paper. Donnie listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, you did what you thought was right. But maybe now he needs to see for himself. I looked at him. You think I should let him go? He sighed. I think you might not have a choice. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, Caleb came into the kitchen holding his phone. He looked tired. His voice was calm. I want to meet him. I put my coffee down and braced myself. Not because I'm mad, he said. And not because I don't love you. I need to know. I nodded even though my hands were shaking. Okay, I said. We agreed he'd meet Brad in a public place. Donnie offered to go with him. Not to interfere, just to be nearby in case anything felt off. Caleb said no. He wanted to go alone. That part stung more than I expected. He booked the flight with money he'd saved from his job. Told me he'd only stay one night, 2 max. He didn't want to call it a trip. He didn't pack a suitcase, just a backpack with a change of clothes and a charger. I drove him to the airport. The whole ride he barely spoke. I kept glancing at him. His face set, hands fidgeting in his lap. I wanted to say 100 things, but I didn't want to load him down with guilt before he even got there. When we pulled up to departures, he looked at me and said, I'm not doing this to hurt you. I nodded. I know. And I'm not expecting anything from him. I know that too. He leaned over, hugged me tighter than he had in weeks, then got out and walked through the sliding doors without looking back. I sat in the car for 15 minutes before I could drive away. The next 24 hours were the longest of my life. I barely ate, didn't leave the house, kept my phone charged and within reach at all times. He texted me once that night. I'm okay. Nothing more. The next evening, I picked him up from the same spot. He walked out of the terminal looking different somehow. Not angry. Not sad either. Just heavier. The car ride home was silent until we were halfway there. Then he said, he cried when he saw me. I didn't say anything. He said he messed up. That he thought he'd ruin my life if he came back. I stayed quiet, gripping the steering wheel harder than I needed to. He told me he tried to send money once. Said you never cashed the check. My stomach turned. That part was true. It was a small check, $300, that arrived out of nowhere. No return address. I torn it up. At the time, it felt like an insult. Like he was paying for peace of mind. Caleb turned to look at me. Is that true? I nodded once. Yeah. He looked back out the window. He's got another kid now. A daughter. She's 6. That hit like a punch I didn't see coming. Caleb said it like a fact. Not bitter, not jealous, just reporting it. She has his eyes. We didn't talk for the rest of the ride. When we got home, he went straight to his room. Later that night, I passed by his door and heard him crying. Not loud. Just the kind of quiet crying that breaks your heart because it sounds like someone trying not to fall apart. I stood there with my hand on the doorknob, but I didn't go in. Because I didn't know what to say anymore. I'd spent 17 years building walls to protect him. And now all I could do was watch as he picked through the rubble, trying to decide what pieces were worth keeping. He doesn't talk about the trip much now. He keeps things light, jokes more, eats dinner with us again. But sometimes I catch him staring off during quiet moments like he's remembering something and trying not to show it. I want to ask what happened, what was said, how it really felt, but I don't. Because I think he's still figuring that out himself. And maybe he needs to believe I trust him to carry it. So I smile when he smiles, laugh when he makes jokes, and tell him I'm proud of him even when my chest feels hollow. I still don't know if I did the right thing all those years ago. But I do know this, when he said, I guess he just didn't want me, and I stayed quiet, that silence changed something between us. And no matter how close we get again, I don't think I'll ever fully get that moment back.